Hello, this is Kyle Jones with the Fullness of Meaning Christian Ministries, where we do exegete the Bible from the original Hebrew and Greek, go to extant sources only to return again to complete the full nest of meaning. Today I'm going to start this lecture by reading two excerpts from Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. The Christian is way different, harder and easier. Christ says, "Give me all. I don't want so much of your time and so much of your money and so much of your work. I want you. I have not come to torment your natural self, but to kill it. No half measures are any good. I don't want to cut off a branch here and a branch there. I want to have the whole tree cut down. I don't want to drill the tooth or crown it or stop it, but to have it out. Hand over the whole natural self, all the desires which you think innocent, as well as the ones that you think wicked, the whole outfit. I will give you a new self instead. In fact, I will give you myself. My own will shall become yours." The second excerpt. It is like that here. The terrible thing, the almost impossible thing, is to hand over your whole self, all your wishes and precautions to Christ. But it is far easier than what we are all trying to do instead. But what we are trying to do is to remain what we call ourselves, quote unquote. To keep personal happiness as our great aim in life, and yet at the same time to be, quote, good, end quote. We are all trying to let our mind and heart go their own way, centered on money or pleasure or ambition, and hoping, in spite of this, to behave honestly and chastely and humbly. And that is exactly what Christ warned us that you could not do. Oh, that was amazing. Be taken completely over and taken out of this prideful sense, this body. I love that, Quinn. Thank you. Well, today we are covering the account of Genesis, chapter 11, concerning the Tower of Babel, national monumentism, if you will, or Nimrodianism, as I call it. I do remember being in fourth grade and being called on to answer questions, and I would always answer the question by reading like 2 or 3 chapters prior to the answer. Most people wanted just to give a quick textbook answer, and I was always the crazy kid who would say, you can't understand the answer unless you understand the beginning of it. Well, we understand that word is called the etiology, the track, the leading to the thing. I remember reading Beowulf, and the question was posed, I believe it was by Beowulf himself, asking, what is the birthing right of your statement? And what that means, and it was Anglo-Saxon he said it, but what it means is, why did you ask that question? Why? Not the what, but the what. And so what we're trying to do here is to accomplish something that, in my opinion, is impossible. I said earlier that though I do not in any way slam on all universities, there are some really good Christian universities, I believe in Edinburgh in particular, but by and large, the secular universities will, if you take a Bible class, they relegate the Bible to meager facts at best, otherwise rabble or some kind of disjointed writing. And that is just not so. I've been studying Hebrew and Greek for probably about 30 years now, and I can tell you that this is the most beautiful, symmetrical book I have ever read, and there's nothing like it. The words, the names of the people are the events, are the locations, is the story. And, I'm before you in awe, not because I don't have enough information. The information I have is overwhelming, and it's endless what God has given us. I just don't know where to start. But what I'm going to try to do before we hit Genesis chapter 11 is to go back into 9. But even before we do that, I want to explain something here. My approach to the Bible is not some method. I don't have a method, but I have an idea. And my idea stands as follows. And I will spot our website, the Fullness of Meaning Christianministries.com. If you can go through I think it's the archives, and then you go to Finding Christ Outside of the Bible, and then you choose Messiah versus Hero. I'm explaining, and I have explained, two systems of thought. The first is the system of the Messiah. And the system of the Messiah is what it is, Mashiach in Hebrew. It means to take from point A fully to point B. Now, prior to Christ being on this earth as Jesus Christ, Mashiach, Moshe, Moses, meant somebody who was going to do a work to carry somebody over. In a sense, it meant a person with some amount of respect, like, say, Mr. Or Mrs. But as Christ came to us in the flesh and completed his work, as his name Christos means to complete the task, to be fully anointed, to be fully daubed, he completed the meaning of the name Moshe or Mashiach. And that does mean to, therefore, it means to carry from point A to point B at your death, at your resurrection, to be fully atoned, to be fully saved. And that is the fullness of meaning of the word Messiah. And I've said in earlier lectures as well, the words of the Old Testament, the Old World, did not have the fullness of meaning until Christ was on this earth and fulfilled those terms to his life. A name is about your function and what you do, and Christ did all completely with that, with total perfection. And with that said, the two systems that I'm approaching are Messiah, and the second system is the hero. The Werpos in the Proto-Indo-European, the Kurgan, the Hurrian language. These are some of the oldest languages in the world. The Werpos is where we get the word epic from. Epos, it means the hero. There is the word Gibor in Hebrew, which means the great man, the mighty hunter, which is what Nimrod was called. So when somebody is epic, when somebody, let's say, runs for a touchdown and wins the game at the Super Bowl, we have a guy who is well spoken of by all who are participating in that game. And so it doesn't matter if he's a bank robber or a murderer or whatever he is. We have put on our satisfaction onto him because we are living through that person winning that touchdown. And we have enjoyed the game. After that, it does not matter. The epos of the old world, even of King Arthur's day, St. George the Dragon, the epos killed the dragon and won the damsel and won the show. Therefore, he was spoken highly of. There is a man named Dr. Calvert Watkins, who true genius of languages, who did take over the Oxford chair for a while until he passed away not too long ago. And he wrote a book called How to Kill a Dragon. And in the book, he lists almost every instance of writings of heroes slaying a dragon. Now, he brought it down to a formula. The formula is hero slays dragon, is spoken highly of. Now, that's the later idea of hero, say in the King Arthurian mythologies. But if you go back in time, if you go back to the older writings of the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, excuse me, I can't say it, and then the Ramayana, we start to learn about these Indian epics of these heroes that had to learn to take their lives to kill this dragon. And the earliest stories of heroes killing the dragon, the earliest stories that Calvert Watkins said, now he's not a believer, he's not trying to portray himself as a Christian, a Jew, or whatever, he's just being a scientist with languages. And he's saying that if you take back the formula and you go back into, say, 1500 BC and you go past it, like, say, to the god Bran, the Celtic god Bran, who had 12 men at his round table who went into the ocean fishing for men's souls. These kinds of heroes were to be laid down, their lives to be torn apart, Osiris to be torn apart, this Egyptian idea of the god who would be torn into 12 pieces. There are a lot of, I believe these are the results of the prophecies concerning the Christ. Nonetheless, my point being, as you go back into time, the hero wasn't the hero. He was not the epos, he was the Messiah. And the Messiah was the one who was spoken poorly of, beaten down, trodden, took on the evil, the nature of what they call the Durker, the dark one, the hoarder of knowledge, the hoarder of gold, the hoarder of riches to men. And he killed it by taking it on himself and taking his own life. Now that's the earliest idea of, quote, hero. It's no longer hero. It's Messiah. And if I think back at Genesis 3:15 and following, we see the prophecy concerning this Messiah that was promised and prophesied through the seed of Eve, the seed of Adam in the line of Eve, that she would give birth eventually, and the Toledoth, the Hebrew calls it the Toledoth, the generations, a Messiah who would crush this serpent's head, this Satan's head, but the serpent would bite the heel of this Messiah. Well, the foot was always known as the basileus in the Greek. It meant the little footers, the walk. It was us. It's us, the believers. The prophecy concerns this Satan cutting, hacking, gnawing at us, but the Christ figure crushing the snake. And we see that in a depiction, in an icon or an idol in even Hinduism called Krishna. We see Krishna, Kuryasna, the extension of the Lord even in Sanskrit. It means, and you see the picture of Krishna actually crushing the cobra's head while the snake is trying to bite at his heel. So we do see depictions of this prophecy dispersed throughout the entire world. But Dr. Calvert Watkins was saying, if you go back in time, there was never such a thing as somebody being praised for killing a dragon. And we're going to see what praise, Halil, really means, to praise oneself. It is the actual name of Satan himself. So what I'm going to do is try my best to do the etiology like I was when I was in 4th grade and read quickly through Genesis 9. I'll go as far as I can go, and we'll just stop when we have to stop. Then it just says Genesis chapter 9, verse 1. Then God blessed Noah and his sons, saying to them, be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth. Number 1 commandment, go forth and complete this earth, fulfill this earth with your seed, your generations, your Toledoth in the Hebrew. Well, in Genesis chapter 11, we have a commandment of man, let us stay and be afraid. Genesis chapter 9 pretty much is God telling Noah and his sons to go away, to go out from Anatolia, to go away from the hills of Urartu or Ararat, and to go into the world and proclaim what they do know. Mankind in Genesis 11 is saying, let us stay here and create a Shem for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad. So the word futs, I don't have it up here. Let me see if I can. I don't know if I can write it up here. You're going to even see it. I wish I had two more boards. I'd write it out. You probably can't even see this one, can you? Let me see if I can get this one. Futs is what we call it's the root in Hebrew, and it would more or less sound like foots with the Z on it. Futs. It means to be scattered. It means to be sent out. Mankind was afraid to be haifuts or futs. They were afraid to be sent out. God told Noah's family, his Toledoth, to go futs, haifuts, to go out. There's a fear of man that says, lest we be scattered, futs. God says, be scattered. It is this contradistinction that we incur the wrath of God at Babel. But anyway, I'm going to continue to read a little bit here, just a little bit, so you can kind of get a flavor for Genesis chapter 9. Let me see here. It says, the sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These were the 3 sons of Noah, and from them came the people who were scattered over the earth. Noah, a man of soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard. And when he drank some of the wine, he became drunk and lay uncovered inside his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father's nakedness and told his 2 brothers outside. Now, I'm going to stop right there. This is the beginning of the curse of the line of Ham. Now, Noah, when he wakes up from his drunkenness, says Abad Abadim, which means you will be a slave of slaves because of this. It was Shem and Japheth, Shem being the Middle Eastern culture, Japheth being this Nordic, Kurgan, Russian culture that we see today. These people were the ones that came to their father Noah and did not look at Noah in his nakedness. It was a shame in the old world to do so. They walked backwards, basically, putting the cloth on their dad and picking him up. The word conspicuous means to look at this, look at this. Ham was mocking his father. Ham was laughing that his father was on the ground drunken. And it was because of that curse that Noah said to Ham. He said in a prophecy that you shall be a slave to the sons of Japheth, you shall be a slave to the sons of Shem. The word Canaan, by the way, is an epithet, a racial epithet, where we get the sons of Ham. And Canaan does mean one who is lowly, who lives in the lowlands, and also the etymology for it, the Hurrian or Anatolian, that's where Noah came out of. The word was Ken, and it meant that person who is of the color purple. Now, if you look at some of the darker colored or darker skinned people in southern India, the Tamil Nadu region, some of the Sudanese people, you're going to see a darkness and almost like a color, the purple. You know, you have that type of, well, it was a racial epithet at that time, kun, and that's what it meant. We are, of course, all under sin. We need grace. There's no racial epithet here, but just to say the least, this is what the text says. We go with it. So what I'm going to do is continue right here, and I'm going to go to Genesis 10 to discuss this going out. Okay, so this is the account of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, Noah's sons, who themselves had sons after the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshach, and Tyrus. The sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Riphath, Togarmah, the sons of Javan. Goes on and on. Now, the sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Put. And I believe that word Put has to do with this right here, the ones who were simply sent out and scattered abroad. And Canaan, again, the same thing, the slaves, the ones who were put under some kind of bondage. Now, it goes on and on. It goes to the sons of Cush, Sheba, Havilah, Sabbaktah. The sons of Raman, it goes on, Sheba, Dadan, and Sheba, Dadan are the people of Saudi Arabia. Now, it says right here in verse 8, I believe, if I can see that right, my eyes are so bad. Cush was the father of Nimrod, who grew to be a mighty warrior. Now, right here, the word mighty warrior was the word Gibor. That is the same name for the word epos or werpos. It meant the one who was spoken highly of and esteemed, okay? It is this highly esteemed person that we're going to be focusing on because it is in his system of Nimrod, Nimrodianism, that we go to a man who goes into a temple or some place and says, I've talked to God, and then therefore I'm telling you what to do, so you've got to go out and you've got to listen to me. This is how tyranny starts. And by the way, the word Gibor does mean tyrant. And the Bible says right here that he was the first of his kind, Nimrod. He was the first tyrant, tyrannical man, Adama-ish, on this earth. So that was the point of Nimrod. Now, I do want to go over here a second because tremendous scholar, Dr. A.R. George, the leading Assyriologist and Sumerologist, he took his entire life to study the text of Gilgamesh, or Bilgamesh, if you will, the more proper name, a name that I have been studying as a formula for years now, Pop Gilgamesh, or Pop Bilgamesh, Pop Bilga. These are first established as pictograms, then they became cuneiform, and we come down to understand them through Assyriologists such as this man. These are the words that if we could go back and look at the pictographic nature of who this man was, we would understand that Gilgamesh was the son, I believe, of Cush. I believe the formula establishes it, and I believe that is Nimrod. Now, we have over here I brought this book. I'm not going to go into it all. It's the complete Dead Sea Scrolls, written in English. You can get it's a Penguin Classic. In the Book of Giants, or the Book of Tyrants, Gilgamesh is listed in this book. Now, we thought that he was just some kind of like mythological character. He's the real deal. And in the Dead Sea Scrolls, we have almost the entire collection of the Old Testament. And with that, many of these little clay jars that they found in Qumran, cave 1 through 50, whatever, we found clay jars accounting for Gilgamesh in the books of giants. So we do have, correlative speaking, the culture that did understand the stories of these tyrants of the Gibor of the old world. And I do believe that there is a mix and not a confusion, but what we call, again, the Toledoth, or the genealogy between Ham, Cush, and Nimrod. And again, these are the three tyrants of the old world. Now, if I can for a moment, I'm going to turn to something that I consider to be pretty horrifying. In this book on the temples that were established in the days where Nimrod and his system said, let us make us a name, let us make us a Shem. The word Shem just means national monument, authority, name. It means monument. It means the capital, the place where we have Congress. In this book, in the temples established, this temple list, what they call the list, the house list of Sumeria, there are over 1,400 temples in Mesopotamia. Now, the Bible says that there was this place called Shinar that these men came to establish these temple housings. Now, Shinar, Sheneh, Neherot in Hebrew. It just means a place between the two rivers. Sheneh, two, or of the two, Neherot, the rivers. So it is within this place, this alluvial plain, that these temples began. Now, it's interesting to me that the Bible says in the days before the languages were split, there was one Dabar. Now, I'm going to cover these words next week, or next time we get together. Dabar meant one word, one story, one allocation or allotment of tale, the full testation, the fullness thing, the thing that we are driven by. And I think for right now, one of the most important things that I could say about the word dabar is that it means the force behind the veil that causes all things else to move. There's nothing closer to that word than logos of the New Testament, which means the Christ figure. Now, before I even go to this story of this temple, I love this book by Professor W.O.E. Osterly called The Sacred Dance in the Ancient World. This is not a Christian book, not a Islamic book or Jewish book, whatever. It's just a book about dances and rhythms. I'm a drummer. I discuss things about time and rhythm motion. He discusses this thing called the dabar. The dabar was one of the oldest ideas in the world. It is a stone that they would call a dabar in the Middle East. Almost everybody practiced this. They did a dance called the Hag. Whether you be the Jew, or you be the Aramaean, the Arabic, the Arab, the Assyrian, you would do a sacred dance around this stone because the stone meant the thing of order that we move around as planets move around the sun. Now, that's interesting, isn't it? Before we all knew what was going on back then, they understood that we are the planetes, the wanderers that dance around this thing that we would most closely appropriate ourselves as being the sun. Beautiful testation of understanding the planets and the sun before we knew about it. In this book, he mentions, Dr. A.R. George mentions two of the temples. At the very beginning of his book, he goes on, he covers every temple's name and what it means. I believe that the stories of these temples, by their very name, is portraying the picture negative of what God said and what God is about. So I'm going to give you two instances of that. The first appellate for one of the temples in Mesopotamia, means the middle of, Potomos means rivers, or Shene Neherat, which means in between the two rivers, the Tigris, Euphrates, that alluvial plain right there. The first was called Akalu, or Akalalu, which means destruction or to demolish. Now, what happened at Babel? The temple was demolished. And we see that mentioned that the men who were building the temple, Banu, they were building it, they stopped. The verb Banu in Hebrew in Genesis 11 says the men that were building stopped building. And the Cal perfect, it just means they stopped building. It was actually perfect, the perfect tense. And when they went out, the building was not fully erect. These people that were saying, let us make this a national monument, were still speaking at that time one Shaphat. Now, Shaphat was the national boundary language. Like Germany to France to Italy, these are national boundaries. The language is the lip, is the boundary, is the country, is the national monument, is the law of the land. All the same word. It meant the same thing. Shaphat. You said that, it meant all of that. You're divided by that. Now, the whole world had one Shaphat. That means we were all under the same boundary. We spoke the same law. We spoke to the same God. But in Genesis 9, we see the allocations of lands between Shem, Ham, and Japheth, people already going their own way by their cliques, by their tribes, by the guys they like. And that was the word lashon. It meant how you said something. I said this a couple of weeks ago, discussing about, if I told Brandon, well, nice job, Brandon, I might be telling you, technically, nice job on your camera work, but I'm kind of backslapping you. Well, there's a word lashon for that. And it might mean, I could say anything, and I could put my intonation, my inflection to it, and it would mean something else. Well, everybody has one. And we all have our cliques, and we all have our friends, and we all speak a certain way, and we all get it. And those who don't get it go another way. Well, again, lashon, that's the word for it. So that's what it is. In that day that they split, there was something new. The lashons were already established. Then that was translated as language in the English Bible, which is a total corruption. Nonetheless, men were already being separated by their manners of speaking. But the Shaphat split instantaneously. If you want to go get the American Heritage College Dictionary, I think this is the 4th edition, Dr. Calvert Watkins, one of my favorite guys who did the How to Kill a Dragon, wrote an excerpt in the back of the book, and he showed, now this is a guy who's not being a Christian, not being a Jew, not being anything. We had what we call the Proto-Indo-European language, okay? We had one Shaphat. And then this border hem right here, this circle, shows all of the breaking off, the parsing, the barag, the peleg of languages instantaneously. We have Balto-Slavic, Germanic, Celtic, Italic, Albanian, Hellenic, which is Greek, Armenian, Indo-Iranian, Tocharian, which went into China ultimately. So we have this one-time explosion. Now this guy is not being a Christian. He's not being a Jew. Dr. Calvert Watkins, Oxford University, cum laude scholar. I would say you can pick that up. It's in the back of the book. It'll show you that it happened instantaneously. I think what a remarkable testimony right there, that all of a sudden something split instantaneously, and we all went out from that. So what I think I'm going to do, I probably feel myself, in terms of time, getting a little bit pressed. So I want to show you something of these two temples that I probably jumped from. I'm so sorry about that if I did. The first name of the temple is called Ukal Alu. Okay? It means destruction. And the second temple is called Utlalu, which means to exalt oneself. Okay? Now, just between those two temples, now I could cover the other 1,400 and actually tell the story of the heroes. I believe to study the names of the temples of ancient Mesopotamia is to tell the tale of the heroes who opposed God. Do I believe that there was more than one Nimrod? Yes. Do I believe there was more than one temple? Of course, all of that. But these key figures established the genius thread work to show what we do all the day long when we oppose God. Nonetheless, these were actual objective characters. This is the genius of God who orchestrated the story. And by the way, in the Greek, hysterein, the inquiry, to ask the question. The history is there, and we have to do this. So I want to say in brief, and I'll cut my time after this, I love the root word, what they call the shuresh, lamed, yod, lamed in this case. Just the three letters, leil, okay? Now, Satan's name, one of his names is called Halil in the old world. I'm just going to erase this one. I think it's very important to get this over to you guys. I hope we can see this board. Is that in light, Brandon? I hope so. We have some light for this one. If we don't, I'll work with it here. So I'm going to draw the pictograph of Halil, if I can draw this one. Okay, this is ancient Hebrew. This is the wedge shape that we find from the rabbis or the rabbins of the Babylonian captivity. Halil. But like I told you before, we started with the pictographic society. The picture tells the connective tale. You cannot break the tale when you have the picture. It tells you everything. This is to oneself. By the way, I got to put the yod there. My fault. I forgot that one. And I forgot to put that then. So yod. Halel. Oneself. The hand means to applaud or to give oneself the commendment upon the work that you do. That is a shepherd's hook. That's the hand, and that's the man's breath or who he is, his isness. In the Hebrew, everyone understood that this phrase was Satan's name. To praise oneself, to applaud oneself, to exalt oneself. That system, this system, is what the entire account of Genesis chapter 11 is all about, concerning, let us make us a national monument, lest we be scattered abroad. Isn't it funny that man's politics are not brave? They don't go out into the world and announce God's majesty. They stay home and they have their enclosure, and within their enclosure, they divide themselves by partisanship. This is the result of the curse. It is the curse, and it is the practice of man. It is the practice of Halil. To praise oneself, to see that my party is better than your party. Our might and our intelligence is better than yours. That's what partisanship is about. If you vote for this person, you're going to make all these enemies. You can forget about talking about God at that point. Jesus never played those games. He never voted. He never talked about politics. Partisanship divides men, and that's exactly what was taking place at Babel too. Mankind was trying to create his GOP, his Democratic Party, the socialist, whatever, and ideology and ism mankind was creating in Genesis 11. I think for right now, I'm going to call it quits for this one because I think our time is about up. But I just want to establish the system that we're dealing with in this early world so that I can fill in the names, the places, the dates, and become more specific as we go on. This study between Genesis chapter 9 all the way through 11, in my opinion, is an endless study, and it's a joy to be here to talk what little I can talk about it. So thank you very much. I'm Kyle Jones with the Fullness of Meaning Christian Ministries.